The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep, echoing sound that had intimidated countless species for over 2,000 years. Today, those doors revealed the human delegation walking in single file, their steps quiet against the polished floor. Ambassador Sarah Chen led the group, her dark suit simple compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by the other council members. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, built to accommodate hundreds of different alien species. The air was carefully controlled to support various breathing requirements, and the gravity was set to a comfortable middle ground. Floating translation devices hummed softly overhead, ready to convert any language into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire rose from his seat, his scaled blue skin catching the light from the chamber's artificial suns. His species had ruled vast portions of the galaxy for millennia, and their pride showed in every movement. The four arms of his tall, elegant body gestured dramatically as he began to speak. "Humans," he said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics, "you have been called here today to answer for your recent actions. Your species has overstepped the boundaries set by this council 3 times in the past solar year." The other council members murmured agreement. The insect-like Kryn clicked their mandibles in approval, while the gaseous ethereal collective pulsed with colors that translated to satisfaction. Even the peaceful plant-based Verdani swayed their branch-like arms in a way that showed support for Veltar's words. Sarah Chen stood quietly, her hands clasped behind her back, watching Veltar with calm, brown eyes. She had been humanity's representative to the Council for 15 years and had earned respect for her sharp mind and quick wit. Today, however, she remained silent as the accusations poured forth. "You have established colonies in the Kepler 442 system without permission," Veltar continued, his voice growing louder. "You have built mining operations in the asteroid fields of Tau Ceti, which belongs to neutral space. And most recently, you have placed a research station in orbit around Proxima Centauri b, directly violating the territorial agreements signed by your own government." The human delegation stood perfectly still. Usually, this was the point where Ambassador Chen would step forward with carefully prepared arguments. She would cite colonial law, reference obscure treaty clauses, or present evidence that the territories were actually unclaimed. The Council had grown accustomed to these lengthy debates with humanity. Humans always fought every decision, questioned every rule, and demanded proof for every claim. But today, silence filled the chamber. Veltar paused, clearly expecting interruption. When none came, he pressed forward, his confidence growing. "The Galactic Council has therefore voted on a resolution regarding humanity's future in galactic affairs. You will remove all human presence from the 3 disputed systems within 1 standard galactic month. All human military vessels will report to designated council stations for inspection and registration. Furthermore, any future human expansion beyond your currently recognized territories must receive advance approval from this council." The chamber filled with approving sounds from various species, the harsh barking of the warrior Scaran mixed with the musical chimes of the crystalline resonance. This was exactly what many of them had wanted to hear for decades. Humanity had always been too independent, too unpredictable for their liking. Additionally, Veltar said, clearly enjoying this moment, human colonies that have been established without proper authorization will be placed under temporary council administration until proper procedures can be followed. Human trade vessels will be required to carry council observers, and all human research into advanced technologies must be shared with the appropriate council committees. Ambassador Chen finally moved. She took one small step forward, and the entire chamber fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness focused on the small human woman standing alone before the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. "Is there more?" she asked simply. Veltar blinked his large golden eyes in surprise. No. The resolution is complete. Do you wish to respond to these demands? Sarah Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the gazes of representatives from 47 different worlds. Her expression remained calm and unreadable. No anger, no fear, no defiance, just quiet attention. "We understand your position," she said clearly. Her voice carried well in the chamber, though she spoke no louder than necessary. "The message is received." The council members exchanged glances. This was not going according to their expectations. Where were the heated protests? Where were the demands for negotiation? Where was the typical human stubbornness that had made every previous interaction with them so exhausting? Veltar leaned forward in his seat. "And what is humanity's response to these non-negotiable terms?" Ambassador Chen nodded once, a simple movement of her head. "We'll be in touch." She turned and walked toward the chamber doors, her delegation falling into step behind her. No arguments, no counter-proposals, no requests for time to consider. The humans simply filed out as quietly as they had entered. The massive doors closed behind them with the same deep, echoing sound as before. The chamber remained silent for a long moment as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. In over 2,000 years of galactic politics, no species had ever simply accepted a council ultimatum without some form of negotiation. Veltar slowly settled back into his seat, a growing uneasiness replacing his earlier confidence. The Kryn stopped their clicking, and even the ever-present hum of the ethereal collective seemed subdued. For the first time in galactic history, the humans had said nothing at all, and somehow, that silence felt more ominous than any threat they had ever made. The first reports came in exactly 72 hours after the council session had ended. Lieutenant Zix Ara of the Galactic Monitoring Division stared at her screens in disbelief as data streamed in from across 3 sectors of space. "Sir," she called to her supervisor, her mandibles clicking nervously, "we're receiving evacuation signals from Kepler 442. Commander Torgan, a massive Scaran with battle scars across his gray fur, stomped over to her workstation. "Evacuation? What kind of evacuation?" "Human evacuation, sir. All 3 colonies in the Kepler system are broadcasting departure schedules. They're actually leaving." The commander's yellow eyes narrowed. "Leaving? Just like that?" More reports flooded in. The human mining operation at Tau Ceti had begun dismantling their equipment. The research station orbiting Proxima Centauri b was powering down its systems and loading everything onto transport ships. Not just the disputed territories mentioned by the Council, but dozens of other human outposts were beginning shutdown procedures. Within the first week, it became clear that something unprecedented was happening. Human colonies that had fought legal battles for years to maintain their independence were simply packing up and heading home. There were no protests, no appeals to other galactic governments, no desperate negotiations. The humans were just leaving. Captain Iriltha of the Ethereal Collective watched through her ship's sensors as the last human transport departed from the agricultural world of Harvest Prime. The colony had been there for 30 years, growing food that fed half a dozen nearby systems. Now the fields stood empty, the processing plants shut down, and the spaceport was dark. "They left everything in perfect condition," her science officer reported, the gaseous being's form shifting through confused colors. "Buildings intact, equipment stored properly, even the parks are still maintained. They just walked away." Similar scenes played out across human space. The University of New Cambridge, which had been a center of interstellar learning for over a century, closed its doors and sent its alien students home with full academic records and glowing recommendations. The human professors apologized politely for any inconvenience and wished everyone success in their future studies. The massive trade hub at Crossroads Station, where human merchants had facilitated commerce between dozens of species, began its shutdown sequence. Contracts were fulfilled to the letter, pending orders were completed and delivered, and warehouses were emptied in an orderly fashion. The humans even left detailed instructions for the alien species, who would need to find new trading partners. Ambassador Veltar received daily reports in his office on Zephyr Prime, each one more bewildering than the last. His aide, a nervous young Zephyrian named Kellen, brought him the latest updates with trembling hands. The humans have withdrawn from 47 systems in the past 10 days, Kellen reported. Not just the disputed territories, they're abandoning established colonies, research stations, even diplomatic outposts. Veltar studied the star charts spread across his desk. Red markers showed human withdrawals, and there were far more than he had expected. What about their military vessels? Gone, sir. Every human warship, patrol craft, and defense platform has departed for human core space. They're not running or hiding, though. They're maintaining standard formation and following all navigation protocols. It's like they're just going home. The strangest part was how calm it all was. There were no angry speeches from human leaders, no propaganda broadcasts about council oppression, no calls for resistance. Human news networks simply reported the withdrawals as routine relocations and thanked the galactic community for years of cooperation. Dr. Shen Wei, the head of the Interstellar Medical Research Institute, gave what would be her final press conference from the station orbiting Altair 4. The facility had been working on cures for diseases that affected multiple species, and their research had saved millions of lives over the decades. We want to thank all our alien colleagues for their dedication and friendship, Dr. Shen said calmly, standing before a room full of concerned reporters from across the galaxy. Our research data will be transferred to appropriate institutions, and we're confident that the important work will continue. We wish everyone the very best. But Dr. Shen, called out a reporter from the Kryn News Service, this facility represents hundreds of years of scientific advancement. Why abandon it now? Dr. Shen smiled gently. We're not abandoning anything. We're simply redirecting our efforts. Thank you all for coming. The economic effects began to show within days. The Zephyrian Empire discovered that 40% of their advanced technology relied on components manufactured in human factories. The peaceful Verdani found that their entire interstellar communication network had been designed and maintained by human engineers. The warrior Scaran were horrified to learn that their latest generation of warships used human-designed navigation systems. Trade routes that had existed for decades suddenly had gaps where human waypoints used to be. Species that had grown accustomed to human cultural exports, their music, literature, and entertainment, found themselves facing a sudden drought of new content. Even the ethereal collective, who prided themselves on their artistic achievements, had to admit that human creativity had become an integral part of galactic culture. On the outer rim world of Frontier's Edge, Mayor Quilvara of the local resonant community watched the last human transport ship disappear into hyperspace. The humans had been their neighbors for 50 years, helping to build schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. They had shared their knowledge freely and asked for little in return. They didn't even say goodbye properly, Quilvara's aide observed, his crystalline form dimming with sadness. No, Quilvara agreed, but they made sure we had everything we needed before they left. Look. The aide examined the detailed files the humans had left behind, maintenance schedules, contact information for suppliers, even suggested improvements for the town's water system. It was as if they had spent weeks preparing for their departure, making sure their absence wouldn't harm anyone. By the end of the second week, the pattern was clear. Humanity wasn't fleeing in panic or anger. They were conducting the most organized, efficient, and thorough withdrawal in galactic history. Every obligation was met, every debt was paid, and every ally was left in better condition than before. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the situation, but for the first time in their history, they weren't sure what to discuss. They had gotten exactly what they asked for. The humans were following their demands to the letter, but somehow, none of them felt like they had won. The communication from Earth was brief and polite. Admiral Hassan al-Rashid, speaking from the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva, addressed the galaxy with the same calm tone that had become disturbingly familiar over the past month. To our friends and colleagues throughout the galactic community, he began, his weathered face showing no emotion on the screens that broadcast across dozens of worlds. Humanity is implementing a period of internal focus and development. Effective immediately, we will be suspending most external communications and activities. We thank you for your understanding and wish you all prosperity. The transmission ended. Then, nothing. Within hours, every human embassy in galactic space went dark. Communication arrays that had carried human signals for centuries fell silent. The vast network of human explorers, traders, scientists, and diplomats that had spread throughout the galaxy simply stopped responding to any contact attempts. Dr. Varatellish, the Kryn scientist who had worked alongside human researchers for most of her career, tried desperately to reach her colleagues at the Quantum Research Institute that had been relocated to Sol system. Her messages bounced back with automated responses stating that external communications were temporarily unavailable. Temporarily, she muttered in her laboratory on Kryn Prime, her compound eyes staring at the blank screen. What does that even mean to humans? She wasn't alone in her confusion. Across the galaxy, aliens who had built friendships, partnerships, and even romantic relationships with humans found themselves cut off without explanation. The humans hadn't been rude or hostile in their departure. They had simply closed the door behind them and turned off the lights. Ambassador Veltar paced in his office, his 4 arms gesturing in agitation as he spoke to his intelligence chief. What do you mean you can't get through their borders? Intelligence Chief Mordan, a stocky Zephyrian with cybernetic implants, pulled up holographic displays showing the edges of human space. Every approach is being politely but firmly turned away. Our ships are met by automated beacons that redirect them to other routes. No hostile action, no threats, just redirections. What about our spies? Our intelligence networks? Gone, sir. Every human we had recruited as an asset has simply stopped responding. Not captured, not killed, just silent. It's like they all decided to stop talking to us at the exact same time. The economic effects that had started as inconveniences were rapidly becoming serious problems. The Scaran warrior clans discovered that their weapons manufacturing had ground to a halt without human-designed targeting systems. The Ethereal Collective found that their entire entertainment industry was collapsing without the steady stream of human stories, music, and art that had become incredibly popular across their species. Even worse were the diplomatic crises that began erupting without human mediators. The humans had served as neutral parties in dozens of conflicts over the decades, their strange ability to see all sides of an argument making them valuable peacekeepers. Now, old disputes that had been dormant for years began to flare up again. The border conflict between the resonant crystals and the Verdani plant folk, which had been settled by human negotiators 5 years earlier, erupted into skirmishes when a trade dispute went unresolved. The humans had always been there to calm tensions and find creative solutions that both sides could accept. Without them, the ancient mistrust between the mineral-based and biological species quickly returned. Captain Yeriltha found herself caught between her duty to the Ethereal Collective and her growing unease about the situation. Her ship had been assigned to monitor the edges of human space, looking for any signs of what humanity might be planning. But after weeks of observation, her reports were frustratingly empty. "There's nothing to report," she told her commanding officers during a secure communication. Human space appears completely normal from the outside. Ships move between their worlds on regular schedules. Their defensive platforms are active and alert. But they won't respond to any communication attempts. Nothing at all? Her superior pressed. Nothing. We've tried every frequency, every protocol, even emergency distress signals. The humans acknowledge our presence. Their ships avoid collision courses and their platforms track our movements. But they won't talk to us. It's like we don't exist. The most disturbing reports came from the deep space monitoring stations that tracked energy signatures across the galaxy. Dr. Kelvin Oswald, a veteran Kryn scientist who had spent his career studying stellar phenomena, noticed the first anomalies 3 weeks into humanity's silence. The energy readings from human space are changing, he reported to his research team. There are massive power signatures unlike anything in our databases. The patterns suggest industrial activity on a scale we've never seen before. His colleague, Dr. Pixera, enhanced the sensor data on her screen. These readings are consistent with mega-engineering projects, stellar-scale construction, possibly terraforming operations, but the technology involved is beyond anything humanity has ever demonstrated. How beyond? Dr. Oswald asked quietly. Beyond what we thought was possible, she replied. The energy efficiency alone suggests technological advances that should take centuries to develop, but the readings are definitely coming from human space. Similar reports filtered in from monitoring stations around the galaxy. Human space was becoming increasingly active, but the nature of that activity was completely unknown. Radio telescopes that had once easily picked up human-civilian communications now detected only structured signals in unfamiliar patterns. The humans were clearly doing something, but what they were doing was a complete mystery. The Galactic Council convened emergency session after emergency session, but their discussions were going in circles. They had demanded that humanity comply with their ultimatum, and the humans had complied perfectly. There was nothing to complain about, nothing to condemn. The humans were staying within their designated space and bothering no one. Yet somehow the galaxy felt less safe than it had in centuries. Ambassador Veltar stood at the observation deck of his diplomatic vessel, staring out at the stars that marked the boundary of human space. For weeks, he had been trying to understand what had gone wrong. The Council had finally put the troublesome humans in their place, forced them to accept proper authority. This should have been a victory. Instead, it felt like they had made a terrible mistake. His aide approached quietly. "Sir, we've received another request from the Verdani Council. They want to know if we can help mediate their dispute with the Resonance." Veltar continued staring at the stars. "Tell them we'll consider it." "Sir, this is the 15th such request this week. Without human mediators, half the galaxy is asking us to solve their problems." "I know," Veltar said softly. "And we're not very good at it, are we?" The aide said nothing. They both knew the answer. The humans had been far better at finding solutions that everyone could live with. The Council's approach was more about imposing order than creating understanding. In the distance, a single human ship passed silently through space, its destination unknown. It didn't respond to their signals, didn't acknowledge their presence, didn't even seem to notice they were there. For the first time in his long career, Ambassador Veltar felt truly alone in the vast darkness of space. The war started over water rights. It was such a small thing, really. The resonant crystals of Harmony 7th needed specific mineral content in their water to maintain their structural integrity, while the Verdani settlers in the neighboring system required pure H2O for their root systems. For 15 years, human mediators had maintained a complex sharing agreement that satisfied both species. Without the humans, the old hostilities returned within weeks. Commander Zarthek of the Skaran 4th Battle Fleet watched the tactical displays with growing alarm as Resonant and Verdani ships exchanged weapons fire above the disputed water world. His orders were to maintain peace, but the Skaran approach to peacekeeping was very different from the human method. All ships, prepare to enforce a buffer zone, he growled into his communicator. Any vessel that fires weapons within 10,000 kilometers of our formation will be destroyed. The threat worked, temporarily. Both fleets pulled back, but the underlying problem remained unsolved. The Skaran could impose order through force, but they couldn't make two incompatible species want to share resources. Only the humans had possessed that strange ability to find creative solutions that made everyone happy. Similar conflicts erupted across the galaxy. The ethereal collective and the Kryn had been arguing over exploration rights in the Vega sector for decades before human negotiators helped them establish a joint research program. Now, with the humans gone, old resentments flared up again. Each species was convinced the other was trying to steal their discoveries. Dr. Vara Telesh found herself appointed to an emergency diplomatic committee, despite having no training in politics. I'm a scientist, she protested to the Kryn High Council. I study quantum mechanics, not interstellar relations. You worked with humans for 30 years, Council Speaker Thrixall replied. You understand how they thought. Perhaps you can help us find solutions the way they did. But Dr. Telesh quickly discovered that understanding humans and thinking like them were very different things. When she tried to mediate a trade dispute between the Kryn and the Zephyrian Empire, both sides left the meeting angrier than when they started. The humans made it look so easy, she muttered to her assistant after the failed negotiation. They would ask a few questions, suggest some compromise that seemed obvious once they said it, and somehow everyone would agree. How did they do that? The economic collapse was accelerating. The Zephyrian Empire's manufacturing sector was operating at 30% capacity without human-designed components. They had tried to reverse engineer the technology, but human designs were incredibly complex and integrated. Every system connected to every other system in ways that their best engineers couldn't fully understand. Emperor Velmor himself called an emergency meeting of his economic advisors. How long can we maintain current operations? 6 months, maybe 8 if we implement strict rationing, his chief economist replied nervously. The humans didn't just sell us components, Your Majesty. They designed entire economic systems. Our supply chains, our manufacturing processes, even our currency exchange rates were all optimized by human algorithms. Then we go back to our old systems. We can't, sir. We've been using human methods for so long that we've lost the knowledge of how our original systems worked. It would take years to rebuild everything from scratch. The same conversation was happening on dozens of worlds. The galactic economy had become so intertwined with human innovation that removing them had created a cascade of failures. Species that had been proud and independent for millennia found themselves helpless without human expertise. But the real terror began when the deep space monitoring stations detected something impossible. Dr. Kelvin Oswald stared at his readings for the 5th time, certain there must be an error in his instruments. The energy signatures from human space had spiked again, but this time they were accompanied by gravitational anomalies that suggested massive objects moving at impossible speeds. Run the calculations again, he ordered his team. Dr. Pixara worked frantically at her console, her mandibles clicking in agitation. Sir, the math is correct. These gravitational readings suggest that something the size of a small moon just moved from the Sol system to the edge of human space in less than a day. That's impossible. Nothing that large can move that fast. I know, sir, but the readings are consistent across all our monitoring stations. Similar reports came in from across the galaxy. Human space was showing energy patterns that defied known physics. Objects were moving between star systems at velocities that should have been impossible for anything with mass. Construction projects were being completed in time frames that suggested either impossible automation or technologies that the galactic scientific community couldn't comprehend. The Council's intelligence services were in complete chaos. Every attempt to penetrate human space had failed. Probe ships sent to investigate were neither destroyed nor captured. They were simply ignored, as if they didn't exist. The few that managed to reach the edges of human territory transmitted readings that made no sense before losing contact entirely. Intelligence Chief Mordan presented his final report to Ambassador Veltar with shaking hands. "Sir, we have to face the possibility that we've made a fundamental error in our understanding of human capabilities." "What do you mean?" "Every species in the galaxy has developed along predictable lines. Military advancement follows technological advancement, which follows scientific advancement. It's a gradual process that takes centuries or millennia. But the humans—" He paused, struggling to find the words. "What about the humans?" "Sir, I don't think they were limited by those same constraints. The technology they're displaying now suggests they were always capable of these advances. They just chose not to use them while they were interacting with us." The implications of this hit Veltar like a physical blow. "You're saying they were holding back?" "I'm saying they were playing by our rules, sir. And when we told them they couldn't play by our rules anymore, they stopped limiting themselves to our level." Across the galaxy, the same terrible realization was beginning to dawn on government leaders, scientists, and military commanders. The humans had never been just another species struggling to find their place in galactic civilization. They had been something far more advanced, choosing to interact at a level that their alien neighbors could understand and accept. Now that choice had been taken away from them. The final straw came when a Zephyrian exploration fleet discovered something that should have been impossible. At the edge of the Kepler 442 system, where human colonies had once existed, they found structures that hadn't been there during the evacuation. Massive crystalline formations hung in space, clearly artificial but built from materials that didn't appear in any known databases. Commander Yistal transmitted his findings back to Zephyr Prime, with barely controlled panic in his voice. "The structures are enormous, sir. Each one is larger than our biggest space stations, but according to our sensors, they were constructed in less than 2 weeks. "That's impossible," came the reply from Fleet Command. "Yes, sir, it's impossible. But they're here." The most terrifying part was what the structures were doing. They appeared to be some kind of observation posts, monitoring everything that happened in the surrounding space. Not weapons, not defenses, just watchers. Silent sentinels that tracked every ship that passed through the system. The humans weren't hiding anymore. They were watching, and for the first time in galactic history, everyone else felt like the primitives being studied by a superior civilization. The age of human compliance was over. Something far more frightening had begun. The message arrived exactly 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, transmitted simultaneously to every government, military command, and communication hub in the galaxy. It was brief, formal, and terrifying in its simplicity. "The human delegation requests an audience with the Galactic Council. We will arrive in 72 hours. Ambassador Veltar read the message 3 times before the full implications sank in. After months of silence, the humans wanted to talk again. But something about the tone of the message made his scales crawl with unease. It wasn't a request for permission or a diplomatic inquiry. It was a statement of fact. The humans were coming, whether the council wanted them or not. The emergency session was called immediately, but the chamber that had once been filled with confident voices now buzzed with nervous whispers. The past 6 months had been a disaster for galactic civilization. Wars that had been dormant for decades were now raging across multiple systems. Economic collapse had brought several major species to the brink of societal breakdown, and the mysterious activities in human space had grown increasingly ominous. When the appointed time arrived, the council members gathered in the same chamber where they had delivered their ultimatum half a year earlier. But this time, the atmosphere was very different. Instead of confident authority, there was palpable fear. The doors opened with their familiar deep tone, and the human delegation entered. But these were not the same humans who had left. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked at the front of the group, but she seemed transformed. Her simple business suit had been replaced by flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Her movements were more graceful, more purposeful, as if she had learned to exist in perfect harmony with the space around her. Most disturbing of all, her eyes held a depth of knowledge that seemed to encompass far more than any individual should be able to contain. Behind her walked beings that looked human, but clearly weren't entirely human anymore. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their faces serene and ageless. Some appeared to be partially transformed into something between organic and artificial, their skin showing patterns of circuitry that pulsed with soft light. Others seemed to exist slightly outside of normal space, their forms occasionally blurring at the edges. The delegation took their place at the center of the chamber, and Ambassador Chen looked around at the assembled representatives with something that might have been amusement. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber, despite speaking no louder than normal conversation. "We appreciate your patience during our period of internal development." Ambassador Veltar found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Ambassador Chen, you look different." "We are different," she replied simply. 6 months ago, you helped us realize that we had been limiting ourselves unnecessarily. We want to thank you for that insight." The screens around the chamber began displaying star charts that made the assembled aliens gasp in disbelief. They showed human colonies spread across multiple galaxies, thriving worlds that should have been impossible to reach with any known technology. Massive space structures that dwarfed anything the galactic civilization had ever conceived, ships that seemed to travel between dimensions rather than through normal space. "We considered your ultimatum carefully," Chen continued, "and decided you were absolutely correct. Humanity doesn't belong under Council jurisdiction. We had outgrown your oversight long ago, but were too polite to mention it." Dr. Vara Telesh spoke from her seat in the observer section, her compound eyes wide with wonder and terror. "How? How did you develop all of this so quickly?" Ambassador Chen turned to her with a gentle smile. "We didn't develop it quickly, Dr. Telesh. We've had these capabilities for quite some time. We simply chose not to use them while we were part of galactic civilization. You see, we learned early in our expansion that other species were more comfortable with us when we appeared to be at a similar technological level. So we limited ourselves to technologies and approaches that you could understand and accept." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs as the full implication of her words sank in. The humans had been pretending to be less advanced than they actually were, playing down to the level of their alien neighbors. "But why?" demanded Commander Zarthek of the Scaran fleet. "Why limit yourself? Why not show your true strength?" "Because," said one of the transformed humans, stepping forward, "strength without wisdom leads to tyranny. We wanted to be part of a galactic community, not rulers of it. We believed there was value in cooperation and mutual growth." Ambassador Chen nodded. "Unfortunately, the Council has made it clear that such cooperation is not possible under your current system. You prefer hierarchy to partnership, control to collaboration, so we've made other arrangements." The star charts shifted to show vast regions of space beyond the known galaxy, filled with thriving civilizations that none of the Council species had ever detected. The scope of human expansion was staggering, suggesting they had been exploring and colonizing far beyond galactic boundaries while maintaining the pretense of being confined to local space. "These are our new neighbors," Chen explained. "Species from the Andromeda Galaxy, the Large Magellanic Cloud, and several other galaxies that you haven't discovered yet. They have proven much more interested in genuine cooperation and mutual advancement." We've been quite busy introducing them to the concepts of art, music, literature, and scientific collaboration that we developed during our time in this galaxy. A new figure stepped forward from the human delegation, but this being was clearly not human in origin. Its form was crystalline but organic, beautiful and alien in ways that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the mind. "The humans have told us much about your Galactic Council," it said. "We are curious about your methods of governance." Ambassador Chen's smile widened slightly. "The Symphonic Collective from Andromeda has asked if they might open diplomatic relations with this galaxy. They're particularly interested in learning about species that govern through ultimatums and force, rather than consensus and cooperation. They find it anthropologically fascinating." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. The implication was clear. Humanity hadn't just found new friends. They had found new friends with far more advanced capabilities who were very interested in studying the primitive political systems of local galactic civilization. "What do you want?" Ambassador Veltar asked, his voice barely audible. "Nothing," Ambassador Chen replied. "We wanted to inform you that we're formally withdrawing from all treaties and agreements with local galactic governments. We'll be establishing our own trade routes, defense agreements, and cultural exchanges with species who are interested in genuine partnership. You're welcome to join us if you ever develop more mature approaches to interstellar relations." She paused and looked around the chamber one more time. "Oh, and the Symphonic Collective asked me to give you a message. They said to tell you hello. They're very much looking forward to meeting you someday. They've prepared several research programs focused on studying primitive political systems and their eventual evolution toward more enlightened forms of governance." The human delegation began to turn toward the exit, but Ambassador Chen stopped at the chamber doors. "One final note. We've left detailed instructions with your respective governments on how to manage the technological and economic transitions you'll be facing. We don't want anyone to suffer unnecessarily while you work out your new arrangements. Consider it a parting gift." She paused, her expression becoming momentarily serious. "The universe is vast and full of wonders you can't imagine. Someday, when you're ready to explore it as partners rather than conquerors, we'll be happy to introduce you to our new friends. Until then, we wish you well in your local affairs." The doors closed behind them with finality, leaving the most powerful governing body in the galaxy sitting in stunned silence. They had gained exactly what they demanded: complete authority over their own space without human interference. They had also lost something far more precious than they had realized. They had lost their chance to be part of something greater. In the darkness of the chamber, Ambassador Veltar sat alone with the terrible knowledge that his species had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They had convinced themselves they were dealing with an upstart species that needed to be controlled. Instead, they had been children playing at politics while their patient teachers watched benevolently from the shadows. And now their teachers had found more promising students among the stars. The age of local galactic civilization was ending. Something far grander was beginning, and they had chosen not to be part of it. Outside the chamber windows, the stars seemed dimmer somehow, as if the universe itself had turned away from them. In the distance, barely visible against the cosmic darkness, strange lights moved between the stars, the ships of humanity and their new allies, heading toward horizons that the Galactic Council would never be allowed to see.